All right, welcome back. We are going through Unit 3, Michigan Fair Housing. And yes, this will be pretty specific to the state of Michigan, because that is the state in which I am studying. Just a few things that I should probably say at the beginning of all videos. I am not a licensed real estate licensee in my state. I am studying for my state licensing exam. So this is a study session. I am not a professional, nor am I trying to present or portray a professional real estate individual. This is my way of studying and making this information available to anyone who would like to view it. Um, and the intent is that you can get a taste of what studying for a licensing exam entails. This is not supplemental. You cannot use this toward getting passing a licensing exam. In the state of Michigan, for example, you must pass a 40-hour approved course. As you will see, I am not predominantly displaying the course name. There are many courses out there. I would encourage you to do your own homework. I am not a paid endorsement. I am not making any money from this video. And I am not endorsing the school in which I used or the course that I used because I cannot compare it to any other course, and therefore I can't tell you if it's better or worse than any other course. What I can also tell you is some brokers, if you sign with them, will put you through an approved course on their own, sometimes even assisting in paying for it. So lots of things to consider. This is just for you to have some exposure to what some of these courses look like and what some of the information is. Again, I am not a real estate professional, nor am I attempting to represent myself as one. I am simply reading the information that I am studying so that you can get some exposure to that information. So, in this course, in this lesson, unit rather, we're going through Michigan Fair Housing, and this is Unit 3 of a larger section, Section 7, which is Michigan and Federal Fair Housing. So this is more specific to Michigan. It may be specific to your state. Every state is a little bit different, as I said. If you would like to see the videos for Unit 1 and 2, they've already been produced, and they are on my page and on my channel, and you can access them there if you want to go back and watch those. So I have opened up all of our resources at the beginning of each unit. All of our resources are listed, and then these resources will be specific to each lesson. So let's get started. Introduction and objectives. It may seem hard to believe that, depending on your age, it's quite likely that during your lifetime it was illegal to discriminate against disabled individuals in housing, or against pregnant women, or against families with children. Fortunately, fair housing law now prohibits discrimination in housing for individuals with disabilities and families with children. Michigan fair housing law is even more restrictive than the Fair Housing Act, adding 2 protected classes to the list of 7 federally protected classes. In this unit, we'll look at Michigan's Civil Rights Act, the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act, which replaced the 1968 Michigan Fair Housing Act in 1977. Objectives: explain the impact of the Elliott-Larsen Act upon fair housing laws in Michigan. All right. That is our introduction. We're moving on to lesson 1, fair housing and accessibility for individuals with disabilities in Michigan. So, individuals with disabilities. Let's take a virtual field trip to the HUD website for a moment and learn about the federal laws in place to protect individuals with disabilities. Read about what constitutes a disability for fair housing purposes and study the types of discriminations that are prohibited. Make sure you understand the content presented on the HUD web link. We're going to test your knowledge in a little bit. All right, so this is the disability rights. Let's Let's open it back up because I'm not sure which one it is. Yeah, here it is. Okay. I think we've already got it open here. Yeah. Disability-related topic: assistance animals, disability overview, effective communication. Let's see. Disability overview. Looks like their site is a little slow here. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in the sale, rental, and financing of dwellings and in other housing-related activities based on disability, among other protected classes. Generally, the Fair Housing Act applies to a broad range of persons and entities, including public housing agencies, property owners, landlords, housing managers, real estate agents, brokerage services agencies, and banks. The Fair Housing Act prohibits a broad range of discriminatory activities and statements. In addition, persons and entities covered by the Fair Housing Act may not coerce, intimidate, threaten, or interfere with any individual's right under Fair Housing Act. All right, we're going to stop there. Federal law defines a person with disability as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, has a record of such impairment, or is regarded as having such an impairment, or a person who has a physical impairment that prevents them from living a full, normal life without limitations, or who has a record of such impairment, or who is regarded as having such impairment. I'm going to say substantially limits. Yes. Doesn't necessarily prevent them from living a full normal life without limitations. It just substantially limits one or more major life activities. Regardless of whether someone is living in a private home or in public housing, that person has certain rights under the law. Read each statement. Read each of the following statements and determine whether it's true or false. Disability rights only protects individuals with physical impairments. That is false. Housing providers are required to allow a person with disabilities to make reasonable modifications to a structure if it allows for the person to enjoy the housing and its related facilities. True. Reasonable being the key word. If a housing provider would need to change the rules or policies in order to reasonably accommodate a person with disabilities, the provider exempt from having to do so. That is false. All right. Good job to me. Good job to me. All right, let's build a story. Housing built after March 13th, 1991 with 4 or more dwelling units is required to meet 7 design and construction requirements. Do you know what these requirements are? We will provide the first requirement. It's up to you to complete the remaining 6. Usable kitchens and bathrooms. Accessible public and common use areas. Accessible blank the dwelling unit. Route into and through the dwelling unit. Accessible light switches, electrical outlets, thermostats, and environmental controls. Reinforced walls in the bathroom. Accessible entrance and usable doors. Yay, we did it. So, usable kitchens and bathrooms, accessible entrance, accessible public and common use areas, usable doors, accessible route into and through the dwelling unit, accessible light switches, electrical outlets, thermostats, and environmental controls, reinforced walls in the bathroom. this is going to be our next one. Okay. Michigan's Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act. Now that we've spent some time reviewing federal laws related to accessibility, let's focus on Michigan's Persons with Disabilities Act. Okay, let's read our resource. Michigan Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act. The opportunity to obtain real estate or to use public accommodations can be discriminated on the basis of a person's disability. Reasonable accommodations must be made for those with disabilities, unless doing so would create an undue hardship. Specific to housing, disability is a physical or mental condition resulting from disease, injury, birth, or functional disorder that substantially limits one or more major life activities and is unrelatable to the individual's ability to acquire, rent, or maintain property. Violations. The following actions are prohibited on the basis of disability. Refusing to engage in or negotiating a real estate transaction. Discriminating against the person in relation to terms, conditions, or privileges related to the transaction, or when providing services or facilities related to the transaction. Refusing to receive or present a bona fide offer related to a real estate transaction. Representing that a property isn't available for inspection, sale, rental, lease, etc. when it is available. This includes intentionally failing to bring a property listing to the individual's attention or denying property to a person. Creating and circulating materials such as advertisements or other items related to a transaction that directly or indirectly imply a preference, limitation, specification, or discrimination. For example, including no wheelchairs in advertisements. Offering real estate services, trying to solicitate listings, or accepting a listing with the understanding that discrimination may occur during the transaction. For example, if a seller tells a licensee that he'll refuse to accept any offers from a person with a disability, the licensee shouldn't represent or work with the seller. Discriminating activities related to property appraisals, negotiations, or other brokering arrangements such as financing. Access to real estate services, organizations, associations, or memberships such as in a multiple listing service can't be denied on the basis of disability. Exceptions. Exceptions to the above include rentals in a building that has housing accommodations for two or fewer families living independently of one another. If the owner or immediate family member lives in one of the accommodations, immediate families include spouse, parent, child, or sibling. Renting a room or rooms in a single family dwelling if the lessor or an immediate family member resides in the dwelling. Okay. Lending related violations. Lenders can't discriminate on the basis of disability. These decisions should be made based on the applicant's creditworthiness. Blockbusting is prohibited. Additional prohibitions under the Act. The following actions are also prohibited. Refusing to allow a person with a disability to, of their own expense, make reasonable modifications to the property deemed necessary for full enjoyment of the property. However, for rented property, the owner may require that the property is restored to its original condition except for normal wear and tear. Refusing to make reasonable accommodations in rules, practices, or services, preventing full enjoyment by the disabled party. Designing or building covered multifamily dwellings four or more units that has at least, okay. These are buildings with 4 or more units if the building has at least one elevator or building with a ground floor with 4 or more units that fail to include any of the following. At least one accessible entrance unless terrain or site characteristics prevent this. Accessible building and common use areas that can be used by persons with disabilities. doors designed to accommodate passage by wheelchairs, accessible routes into and through dwellings, including light switches, outlets, thermostats, property controls, reinforced walls for grab bars, and space in kitchens and bathrooms for wheelchairs to maneuver. All right, let's do our knowledge check. Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act. Which of the following are permissible under the Michigan Persons with Disabilities Act? Which are permissible? Refusing to negotiate for a real estate transaction with someone who has a speech impediment. No, no, no. Suggesting to a potential tenant with a disability that they might be more comfortable in a ground floor apartment. No, maybe not. Listening to a client's desires and finding listings that accommodate those desires without interjecting personal opinion or bias. That's probably permissible. Telling a blind client that they will love a particular neighborhood because other people with disabilities live nearby. I think we're going to keep it with this one. Let's see. Yeah, we're right. All right, lesson 2, the Elliott-Larsen Act. Mr. Johansson was on a tear. It's happening right under our noses, you know. First they buy our property and move into our neighborhoods, and next thing you know, they're taking over. This used to be a nice family neighborhood, but now all these unmarried single parents with their revolving door of significant others are turning it into a circus. No, sir. You'd better do right by me and make sure this house gets sold to a nice married two-parent family. Dan Forrester couldn't believe what he was hearing from his new client. How was he supposed to represent this person and list his home for sale? As Mr. Johansson continued on his soapbox, Dan struggled to think of how to respond. All right, let's read about the Elliott-Larsen Act. Here it is. Michigan first established fair housing legislation in 1967, but in 1977, the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act replaced the Michigan Fair Housing Act. Along with race, color, national origin, religion, sex, physical or mental disability, and familial status, the 7 protected classes recognized by the fair housing laws, Elliott-Larsen acknowledges 2 additional classes, age and marital status. It's worth noting that in 2018, the Michigan Civil Rights Commission voted to include protections from discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity when interpreting the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. However, according to the Attorney General, it's the legislature's responsibility to amend the act to specifically include these protections. This will continue to be a hot topic in Michigan and many states as more and more fair housing commissions interpret current fair housing laws, which are otherwise silent on the topic, to include protections on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and other items. No matter the law, it's never good practice for any real estate licensee to engage in discriminatory behavior. Definitions. The Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act defines several key terms as used by the Act. Real estate, real property, buildings, structures, mobile homes, real estate, land, mobile home park, trailer park, tenement, leasehold, or interest in cooperatives or condominiums. It's worth noting that in some states, mobile homes aren't considered real property unless they meet certain conditions, but for the purpose of the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act, mobile homes are considered real property. Real estate transaction, sale, exchange, rental, or lease of real property or interest in real property. Housing accommodations, real property used, occupied, or intended or designed to be used as a home or residence for at least one person. The real property can be improved or unimproved. This means that housing accommodation for the purpose of this act could include unimproved land zoned for residential dwellings. Real estate broker or salespersons, anyone, whether licensed or not, who for compensation engages in real estate activities. So those are definitions of the Act. Violations of the Act. Anyone engaged in a real estate transaction or acting as a real estate broker or salesperson can't do any of the following actions on the basis of religion, race, color, national origin, age, sex, familial status, or marital status of an individual or a person living with that individual. Refuse to engage in a real estate transaction. These are things we cannot do. Discriminate against the person in relation to terms, conditions, or privileges related to the transaction, or when providing services or facilities related to the transaction. Refuse to receive or present a bona fide offer related to a real estate transaction. Refuse to negotiate a transaction, including terms and conditions of a rental or purchase based on a protected characteristic. Present that a property isn't available for inspection, sale, rental, lease, etc. when it is available. This includes intentionally failing to bring a property listing to the individual's attention or denying property to a person. Create and circulate materials, such as advertisements or other items related to a transaction, that directly or indirectly imply a preference, limitation, specification, or discrimination. For example, describing an area as a Hispanic neighborhood. This may also include the use of forms, such as rental application forms, that record a person's protected characteristics with the intention to discriminate based on that information. Offer real estate services. Try to solicit listings or accepting a listing with the understanding that discrimination may occur during the transaction. For example, if a seller tells the licensee that he'll refuse to accept any offers from minorities, the licensee shouldn't represent or work with this seller. Discriminate related to property appraisal, negotiations, or other brokering arrangements, such as financing. I don't like the way they should be discrimination related too, but okay. Restrict access to real estate services, organizations, associations, or memberships, such as in a multiple listing service based on a protected class. All right. Exceptions. Again, this is all stuff that we've gone over, but we're going over it again. Exceptions to the above violations include rentals in a building that has housing accommodations of 2 or fewer families living independently of one another. If the owner or an immediate family member lives in one of the accommodations, immediate family includes spouse, parent, child, or sibling. Renting a room or rooms in a single-family dwelling if the lessor or an immediate family member resides in the dwelling. Rental of a housing accommodation for 12 months or less by the owner or lessor if the accommodation was occupied and maintained by the owner or lessor as the primary legal residence for at least 3 months immediately preceding the lease. Specific to age and familial status provisions, the sale, rental, or lease of accommodations meeting federal, state, or local housing program requirements for senior citizens or for the purpose of housing those aged 50 or older. Generally, any conditions that prohibit or limit the use of occupancy of real property on the basis of religion, race, color, national origin, age, sex, familial status, or marital status are void. However, these limitations of use may be permitted on religious basis for real property held, operated, or supervised by a religious organization or institution. Under other violations under the Act, consumers seeking financing or financial assistance related to a real estate transaction or construction, rehab, maintenance, or improvement of real property can't be discriminated against on the basis of religion, race, color, national origin, age, sex, familial status, or marital status. Lenders can't engage in blockbusting, redlining, or steering. Real estate licensees are also prohibited from engaging in blockbusting. Michigan law states that it's illegal to induce real estate transactions from which a person may financially benefit by representing that a change is or will occur in the neighborhood or area related to religion, race, color, national origin, age, sex, familial status, or marital status. This may include representation that property values or quality of schools will decline or that crime rates or antisocial behavior will increase. It's also illegal for two or more individuals to conspire to retaliate against someone who has made a civil rights complaint or someone opposing that opposing that a violation occurred. Okay. Seeking remediation. Under state law, any person that is believed to be the victim of discriminatory practices can take any of the following actions within 180 days of the discriminatory activity. That's 6 months. File a complaint with the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. File a complaint with local commissions. File a private civil lawsuit in a Michigan circuit court. Federal complaints of discrimination must be filed within 1 year. Potential remedies. The Michigan Civil Rights Commission can order any of the following remedies for violation of the Act. Cease and desist. If it's proven that violations have occurred, the Commission can require the respondent to cease and desist the activity that is a violation. Record keeping. The Commission can require respondents to keep records of their actions that comply with the Act and to produce those records upon request. Assess fines for damages incurred. The Commission may require the respondent to pay the complainant's attorney's fees, pay for any profits earned during the violation, and pay other additional costs. Additionally, the Commission can seek court orders that require the respondent to rent or sell property to the complainant, pay for economic damages incurred by the complainant as a result of the violation, or pay a fine to the state. Penalties. The circuit court can assess penalties for the violation. The standard penalties are $10,000 for first, $25,000 for second violations within 5 years, or $50,000 for 2 or more violations within a 7-year period. Licensees found guilty of fair housing law violations may also face license suspension from the department. Whew, that was a lot of information. All right, let's see how we did. The Elliott-Larsen Act is Michigan's fair housing legislation. Which of the following are protected classes? Race is protected. Religion is protected. National origin is protected. Military status does not seem to be protected. Age is, and marital status is. I'm surprised military status is not. So you can discriminate against somebody who's in the military, I guess. That doesn't seem fair. Elliott-Larsen Act 2. You still with me, Dan? Yes, I'm with you, Mr. Johansson. I was just thinking about what you were saying. I personally respect your right to your own point of view, but Michigan state law doesn't agree. We can't list your house for sale unless we make it available to everyone who's qualified to purchase. What do you mean? What state law? All right. Which law is Dan Forrester referring to? Well, we're referring to Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. Who would be considered a member of a protected class under Elliott? There are 3 correct answers. An 82-year-old retired railroad worker? Yes. An unmarried couple who have been together for 10 years? Yes. A woman who's genetically predispositioned to schizophrenia? Yes. A Gulf War veteran? Unfortunately not. All right. Elliott-Larsen Act 3. So you see, Mr. Johansson, Dan told him, marital status is protected under the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act here in Michigan. Who cares? They can't do anything to me for refusing to sell my house to someone who's going to break down the family values of the neighborhood. Maybe not you, but my license would be in jeopardy if I were to help you, knowing you would be violating fair housing law. How? Let me explain. Build the story. Dan explains to Mr. Johansson that refusing to sell his house to someone who is not in a traditional family unit is a violation of the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act because it is discrimination based on their marital status. All right. Mr. Johansson has a lot of money and can be very persuasive. Dan has to make a decision about what he will do. If a potential buyer who doesn't fit Mr. Johansson's idea of the perfect family agreement perfect family agreement presents an offer and Dan refuses based on his client's wishes, what could the potential buyer do? There are three correct answers. File a civil lawsuit in civil court? Yes. File a complaint with the Michigan Civil Rights Commission? Yes. File a complaint with local commission or human relations? I don't know. File a complaint with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development? Yes. Oh. Marital status isn't federally protected. So file a complaint with the local commission or human relations. Okay, I must have missed that one. Penalties for violation. Dan further explains to Mr. Larsen that the potential penalties he could face for being involved in a discrimination case. Dan has always followed the law and believes wholeheartedly in fairer housing. What's the civil penalty for a first-time violation? $10,000. We don't want that. All right, looks like we might be about done. We are done. All right. That was okay. We've got lesson 3 here. Michigan Department of Civil Rights. All right, then we'll do the unit exam and then we will be done with unit 3 and still have unit 4 to go. All right, Michigan Civil Rights Regulators. Did you know that Michigan was the first state in the country to adopt the rights of the individual as part of its state constitution? The Civil Rights Commission was established in 1964, and the following year, the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, MDCR, was created to serve as an enforcement arm of the Civil Rights Commission. Take a look at the brochure about MDCR and the Civil Rights Commission in your resources. All right, let's close this out, and we're just going to open that up. In 1964, Michigan became the first state to enshrine civil rights protections for all citizens. MDCR investigates and resolves discrimination complaints, and we work to prevent discrimination through community outreach, education programs, and partnerships to promote voluntary compliance with civil rights laws. MDCR also provides information and services to businesses on diversity initiatives and equal employment law. Our federal partners are the Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or EEOC. In addition to investigating complaints, our department is also home to the Michigan Women's Commission, the Asian Pacific Americans Affairs Commission, the Division on Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and the Hispanic Latino Commission. MDCR also administers the Michigan Indian Tuition Waiver Program. All right, lots of good stuff going on there. All right, let's do a little knowledge check. Michigan civil rights laws prohibit discrimination in a number of areas, including housing. Which of the following statements are true about the role of Michigan Department of Civil Rights in regard to fair housing? Michigan civil rights laws prohibit discrimination in housing based on height and weight. I don't think so. If a person believes that she has been discriminated against, she can contact the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. I think that's true. Does the Michigan Department of Civil Rights exist, Paul?
What?
Michigan Department of Civil Rights exist?
Yeah.
Okay. For more complaints, far more complaints are received than resolutions met. The department unfortunately doesn't resolve many cases annually. I don't know if it says that anywhere or not. I'm just going to put false on that. Yeah, okay. I might have missed that one. Civil rights questions and answers. Let's take a look at this really quick. 12 pages. Yeah, we're going to skip that for now. All right. Phew, Dan thought to himself. I'm sure glad that one's done. Selling Mr. Johansson's large home in an affluent neighborhood had been one of the most significant real estate transactions of his career. Dan had been troubled from the start by Mr. Johansson's insistence that only certain potential buyers even be allowed to look at his house. In the end, the house sold to a husband and wife from Indiana with 3 small children. Dan had tried to stick to the law and his own convictions, but Mr. Johansson was very persuasive. Oh well, Mr. Johansson was pleased the deal was done now. He'd just shake it off and hope no one knew about the single mom and her longtime boyfriend who had earlier offered to pay cash. Oh. Dan knew there was a lot of money to be made in selling Mr. Johansson's house, so when a single mom of four and her longtime live-in boyfriend showed interest and even offered a cash payment, he steered them toward a different property by making Mr. Johansson's house sound less than ideal. What should he have done instead? Choose all that apply. He should have refused to help Mr. Johansson discriminate against certain buyers. He is complicit in the discrimination, and if his discrimination were discovered, his license would be in jeopardy and he may have to pay stiff fines. He shouldn't do anything. After all, he didn't do anything wrong or illegal. He shouldn't have asked the single mom for more cash. He should have asked the single mom for more cash to convince Mr. Johnson to sell, despite personal feelings. After all, money talks. Yeah, we're going to stick with that one. Yep, we're right. Priscilla and Stephen ask questions. Let me just take a drink here. All right. Lots of reading. Priscilla is a single mother of four. Priscilla is a single mother of four children who has been living with her boyfriend Stephen for 10 years. Priscilla fell in love with a large home in a beautiful neighborhood, and she even had cash to purchase the home. When she called the salesperson, Mr. Forrester, she was told some discouraging details about the property. Mr. Forrester was kind and told Priscilla of another familiar home nearby that she and Stephen ended up buying. Priscilla couldn't quite shake the feeling something wasn't right, so she decided to call the Michigan Department of Civil Rights and ask a few questions. Priscilla called the Michigan Department of Civil Rights to find out if she had been the victim of discrimination. The department determined she and her family have been discriminated against. What's the next step in the complaint process? It will seek to resolve the complaint through mediation. It will conduct an evidentiary hearing. It will contact the state attorney's general office to begin preparing a case against Dan Forrester. It will prepare a formal complaint which will be notarized and sent to Dan Forrester for a response. I'm thinking maybe that. Yeah. Okay. Formal complaint sent to Dan. What happens after Dan Forrester receives the complaint? Is he bound? Is he bound for a court hearing? Decide which of the following statements are true. Dan's going to court. No way around it. We're going to say that's false. There will be an investigation to look for evidence that Dan violated Priscilla's civil rights. We're going to say that's true. Dan's going to lose his license because the law demands it for the type of violation. I don't know. I'm going to say that's false. Resolution is the goal. It's possible for Dan and Priscilla to come to terms without the case escalating to court. I'm going to say that's true. Okay, good. Really kind of depends on the situation, but it's not good anyway. So don't do it. No discrimination. All right. We have completed 3. Let's go to our unit exam. Now the unit exam doesn't show us if we're right or wrong until the end. Let's see. 8 questions, 70% to pass. I've already taken it. Oh, let's see how we do. Which of these is a good strategy for a real estate professional who wants to avoid being asked to violate fair housing laws? Ask your clients to complete training on fair housing laws. That's a strategy. Let consumers know upfront that you adhere to fair housing laws. Yes, that's the strategy. Only work with clients who are the same race, religion, and national origin as you. That would really limit us sometimes. Test clients on their knowledge of protected classes. A Michigan licensee has been accused of blockbusting. If this Michigan Civil Rights Commission finds her guilty, this would be her 3rd fair housing related violation in as many years. What penalties may she face? $50,000. If it's proven that violations have occurred, the Michigan Civil Rights Commission can require the respondent to stop the activity that's in violation. This is known as cease and desist. Which of the following owners must abide by the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act? Allison has owned and lived in her home for the last 5 years, but will be renting out the home, for 9 months while she's out of the country. No. Danny owns a duplex. His mother lives in one unit, and the other is being rented out. No. Nelson owns a 4-unit apartment building. He resides in one unit, and the others are rented out. No. Samantha owns, which must abide. Samantha owns and resides in a single-family home in which she rents out the basement. Oh, that's a tough one. I thought all of those were exemptions. Must abide. The first one? Danny owns a duplex and his mother lives in one unit and is renting out the other. No.
I don't know. I think they're all exceptions.
Well, one of them clearly isn't.
They all, I mean, maybe the first one is at 9 months?
This is not it.
4
4-unit
units.
apartment. He resides in one unit and the others are rented out. No.
Yeah, that's fine.
It has to be.
Yeah, 4 or less.
Yeah.
And he's in one.
Danny owns a duplex. His mother lives in one. And we're going to go with this one.
Yeah,
This might be the only one that's an exemption. Yeah, but I thought if you're renting it out, if you lived in it for the 3 months up to it, and you're renting it for less than 12 months, you're exempt.
I
Could have
thought
sworn
so,
that's what I
too.
read, but all right, we'll leave it
3
at that.
years or something, yeah.
Okay. Well, here, what is how's? Yeah, for 9 months while she's out of the country. Okay.
It's fucked, I don't know.
What's your language? According to fair housing laws, the protected class of familial status refers in part to those with children who are defined as anyone under the age of 18. Which of the following actions may not be a violation of Michigan Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act? A building owner hasn't made reasonable accommodations to common areas for those with disabilities because the undue hardship such actions would cause. That's it. We'll just stop right there. We know better. If a salesperson paints a negative picture of a property for a certain class of potential buyers, could that be construed as discrimination? It could, but only if not only could it be construed as discrimination, it is discrimination. Yeah. Along with the 7 protected classes recognized by federal fair housing laws, the Elliott-Larsen Act acknowledges which 2 additional? Marital status and age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, how do we do? 80. Oh, I got one wrong. Ah. Oh, Danny owns a duplex. His mother lives in one unit and the other is being rent. What?
No, you can do that. It's family.
Oh, but you know what? That's the federal law. Michigan state law may be different. You know what I'm saying? They may override that. That may override it. Remember, the more restrictive rule.
The more restrictive rule takes precedence.
Yeah, Simon. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I don't. I have to find the resource again. Let me go back. Find that resource. I want to look it up now because it's bugging me. I must have missed something. Michigan, man. Elliott-Larsen Act. Let's take a look at this one more time. Violations, exceptions. Rentals in a building that has housing accommodations for 2 or fewer families living independently of one another. If the owner or immediate family member lives in one of the accommodations. Immediate family includes spouse, parent, child, or sibling.
Right.
So that would mean, let's take a look at the result again. Let me look at the question. Maybe there's a trick in there. I got 100% last time. Blah.
I don't know.
Allison has, oh, Danny owns a duplex. His mother lives in one unit, and the other is being rented out. Which of the following owners must abide? That's exactly what this says.
Yeah, I know. I'm reading it too. I have the same thing open.
A duplex is housing accommodations for two or fewer families living independently if the owner or an immediate family member lives in one of the that is exactly what this is. Hmm. Well, I don't know. I'm going to take a screenshot of this and put it on the Facebook page and see what is said about that. Let's see.
I got one wrong.
Which one did you get wrong? Was it the same ones I took?
I had that question. Doesn't look like.
Let me see your question you got wrong. There it is. Oh, 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 slow down. Which
Oh, that's the wrong.
wrong one?
I
Okay.
clicked it.
All right, let's capture. Oopsie.
What was that? Section 7.
Oh, I don't want that now. It's all goofed.
Section.
Ooh, that's loud.
Oh, I clicked the wrong unit. Hold on.
Okay. I didn't want that highlighted. Ooh, that's loud. All right. And let's take a screenshot of this. All right.
I
Uh,
got 100%.
got 100%. Well, good for you.
But I didn't have.
All right. All right. I am going to take a 15-minute break. We have one more section to this unit. Let's go back to our course home. We are on unit section 7. We'll be going into unit 4, Fair Housing Workshop. Let me take a look at this and see what's entailed. Yeah. Ooh. Oh. Oh, lots of good stuff in here. A lot more than I thought. 7 lessons. Oh. Yeah. Oh, Fudge is right. So I'm going to take a 15-minute break to break up this video and to get ready for the next section. And I will be back if you are listening.